That's very obvious because you see, in the past, men provided things for women. That was the whole point of it. Women provided sexual attractiveness, physical sexual attractiveness, which of course was a symbol, a sign rather, of fertility. That was why women looked the way that they do. They were showing to men by way of their long hair, by way of their breasts, by their hips and whatnot, that they were not only sexually available, but that they were fertile. Men, on the other hand, what did they have to provide to women to show that they were capable of supporting the woman? Well, they had to show that he had physical prowess, that he could provide the resources for her and her children, their children, so that they would survive. That was the point. That was the transaction that's going on. But now, of course, in our civilization, we have the state that has taken on a whole host of functions that in the past were functions provided by individual men. For instance, physical protection. Men in the past were the ones who provided the physical protection. Men in the past provided physical resources. These are now provided by the state by way of the police apparatus and the judiciary and the welfare state. It's no accident, of course, that in poorer areas, in poorer neighborhoods, among the poor demographic, there are more single mothers where the men have been, for all intents and purposes, shoved aside and the state has replaced them. The state is simping for women. The state is providing these resources because in lower class backgrounds, what happens with the men there? They can't provide the material resources that a woman needs or wants. But the state can, by way of welfare. And so if the welfare state can provide women with a decent income, with money enough for her to buy whatever she wants, why is she going to hitch her wagon to some second-rate loser who can't? Why would she hitch her wagon to a man when she can hitch her wagon to the state? The state will provide her with everything that she needs. And in point of fact, in a democracy, the state will continue to increase the amount of goods and services it provides to women. Of course, in order to win their vote. Politicians in a democracy, they're not stupid. Politicians in a democracy recognize that women are half of the population. And so, of course, they're going to be talking about giving more social services to women. Why? In order to win their votes. And of course, women are going to vote for those politicians who promise to give them more resources. Of course they will. Because women are hardwired to desire more resources, not for themselves necessarily, but rather for their offspring, because, evolutionarily speaking, remember, women depend on the social environment to provide the resources to feed both herself and her child, because a woman with a child cannot provide for herself. And so, of course, in a modern democracy, she is going to be more interested in and supportive of a politician who promises more resources. Of course. That's why women vote Democrat. Yeah, and of course, in order to rebalance this situation, what would have to happen? You'd have to have a party that says, no, we need women to be attracted to men. We cannot have the state interfering in that dynamic between men and women. So therefore, the state should cut back on the welfare system, cut back on all these resources that it provides to women, because they're simply women. Cut back on those resources so that men fill this vacuum. Do you think any politician in his right mind would ever promulgate such an idea in a democracy? Come on, wake up. Never. It's never going to happen in a million years. That's why in a democracy, the state is going to continue to give more and more resources to women, encroaching on the role of men, cutting men out. The state will continue to simp for women, because it's to the politician's advantage and it's to women's advantage. And the few men, like you and myself, for instance, who recognize this and point it out, we're going to be silenced. We're going to be called misogynist, troglodytes, all kinds of names, whatever name you can possibly imagine. Because, of course, if you are talking about getting in the way of any person, be they man, woman, or whatever, getting between any person and resources that come for free from the state, well, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to throw a big old tantrum. That's what they're going to do, of course. I mean, think about it. Yeah, you got some nice gravy train going, yeah, and somebody starts saying, you know, we should cut this gravy train. And what are you going to say? You're going to say, no, 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 no. I don't want anybody to cut my gravy train. That's, of course, what you're going to say because you're a person. Yeah? And we people, men, women, children, all of us, we are lazy. And if somebody is offering to give us something for free, of course we're going to take it. Women are no different. And women have been promised so much, and they are given so much by the state, and that's what's happened. And the growth of the welfare state is what has made men get marginalized. The only men who are still in the game, as it were, are the high status men, the men who, quite frankly, can provide more resources than the state. Those men, the guys who are like middle class, solidly middle class and higher, who can provide a better living standard than the guy who's like slightly below middle class and everybody below him, well, those guys are doing okay. But as the state increases the amount of resources that it gives to women by way of laws that protect them, by way of welfare payments and whatnot, by way of all the things that politicians promise to women in order to get their votes, as that amount of goods, services, resources increases, the number of men who will be able to compete with the state will begin to shrink, as we have seen happen. How to change this, I have no idea. But this is what's happening. Don't pretend otherwise. Our civilization is literally destroying the sexual dynamics between men and women. In the name of providing resources for those who are poor, for women who are vulnerable and whatnot, which is perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine sentiment. I'm not some monster saying that this is a bad sentiment. No. But it has created perverse incentives. It has created the situation whereby middle class, lower middle class, and lower class women are not interested in a man. No. Why would they be interested in a man? They're only going to be interested in a man who's fun to be around with, who's hot, but not a man who can provide them long term. Why would they look for a man who can provide for them long term? They have the state who will provide for them long term. That's the perverse incentive that the welfare state has created. And it affects men, you. You have to compete with the state. You have to be better than the state. In order to get a woman, you better be either extremely sexually attractive or upper middle class or higher in terms of material resources, or else you are going to be with no woman. And it's because of the state.